let's look at the talents without still being able to try it, just from gameplay, knowledge, experience. First of all, replenish 10% toughness on staggering melee attack. I remember when I mentioned that this should be on an Ogren before, and everyone on my chat that was playing Darktide, well, not everyone, but a lot of people on the chat, sorry, said that stagger THP, the toughness would be too strong, and it cannot be ever in the game. But Hamba to you. Anyways, that should be on an Ogren, not on this class. I don't think that makes sense. Enemies knocked away by your Saber Mastiff spawns have 8 stacks of bleed applied to them. Okay, that's gonna make the dog actually pretty strong. I feel like this one isn't a problem. This one kind of makes sense. Replenish 10% toughness instantly and 10% toughness over 4 seconds on elite. That's just veteran repurposed. That was already in the game. Just slightly worse. So we just gave a buffed talent of veteran to another class that is paid, so that's kind of a questionable decision, in my opinion, of course. Replenish 5% toughness per second while within 8 meters of your Saber Mastiff, which is pretty much always, so this is kind of required, obviously. Spending 1 stamina replenishes 15% toughness over 3 seconds. That is a very, very strong toughness replenish. Okay. On block, replenish 50% toughness over 3 seconds. On perfect blow, instantly replenish. I feel like Ogren had something like that as well. Remote detonation. Cause an explosion at your Saber Mastiff's location, staggering and electrocuting nearby enemies. 3 charges. 60-second cooldown. That sounds really, really strong, to be honest. Considering you can kinda make the Saber Mastiff wherever you go, you just have 3 charges of staggering and electrocuting an entire horde. So we basically just buffed the smites of Psyker to the point that it's kinda better. Because it probably does damage, in a sense. I mean, I don't know. Voltaic Shock Mine that activates as it lands. For 15 seconds, it will electrocute all enemies within 5 meters. Okay, that is even more better than Smite was ever. Not gonna lie. Because you don't even have to use the Smite for this to apply, and it's 15 seconds, so that's pretty long. That sounds very strong, and yeah, that's kind of just recycled Smite in a sense that it's just a better upgraded version. Throw an Arbite's grenade that explodes after a short delay for max grenades. So it's just a better impact grenade from Arbites. Doesn't sound like anything special. 25 toughness made into a main talent, which was always just a secondary talent on these small parts here for other classes. So your Saber Mastiff electrocutes enemies it attacks for 5 seconds. Useless. That makes no sense. They already stunned. What's the point of him electrocuting them if he's already on them? What is this supposed to do? Is it working like around on the enemies, or is it just only that enemy he attacks? Because from here, how it says, it's just the enemy that he's on, so it makes no sense. This just doesn't sound like it does anything. 25% ammo capacity. Recycled veteran talent. Melee weak spot hits make the enemy count as staggered for 4 seconds. Recycled Vermintide talent. Always was useless. It was actually better in Vermintide. This one is completely makes no sense. It's pointless. Also just another filler, it seems. Killing pounce targets grants allies incoherency 20% toughness damage reduction and 10% toughness over 5 seconds. Very strong. I would dare to say it's actually kind of too strong because the pouncing happens automatically. 25% damage resistance for 5 seconds after kill or elite or specialist kill. Very broken perk. Insanely broken perk. Because on higher difficulties this is gonna just make it absolutely disgusting, especially that damage resistance in this game gets scaled. Staggering an enemy makes them deal 20% damage less. 5-second last. To be fair, that doesn't sound crazy good at all, because how do I say it? 20% damage. Okay, maybe it does something, but on hordes doesn't really do much, I feel. Unless you pair it up with this, then probably you can just kind of stand in hordes, synergizing those talents. Hitting 3 or more enemies with an attack grants you 20% toughness damage reduction. Okay, these 3 perks are absolutely disgusting together. You basically have more damage resistance than Ogren ever had for doing absolutely nothing. Kinda cringe for a $12 TLC class, but I digress. Saber Mastiff counts towards unit coherency. In addition, you and allies in coherency gain additional 75% toughness damage reduction. So, another Zealot solo repurposed, but instead you have to be close to the dog. You and allies in coherency gain additional 75% reload speed, completely useless. You and allies in coherency deal additional 10% damage versus staggered, also completely useless. This is weapon perk, but completely nerfed to existence. That's completely nothing. 25% toughness again, so once again, completely useless perk. That's nothing. Shouldn't be even a main node. Should just be one of those nodes. Your Saber Mastiff prioritizes elite and specialist enemies, so he doesn't do that on its own. Weird to not make it prioritize them at first, like normally. 25% damage more to them does not do probably a lot, because he still takes way too long for them to die. The pouncing doesn't really do much unless it works with the bleed procs, which probably it does. You're no longer accompanied by your Saber Mastiff, so we are removing the only cool part about the class. Gain 15% toughness damage reduction, 10% attack speed, 10% damage, 1 increased charges on your blitz abilities, and you replenish the charge of your blitz ability every 60 seconds. This kind of sounds like one of those veteran perks. Specialist or something, weapon specialist, kind of removes the fun part of the class. I don't know, this just doesn't sound like anything special, but I guess I can see it being worth it on certain builds, I guess. Your Saber Mastiff prioritizes ranged enemies and deals 50% damage to them. Once again, those two are completely useless. Saber Mastiff does not seem like it does a lot of damage, and extra damage doesn't mean that it's gonna make those enemies anything like better to deal with the Saber Mastiff or anything. At least that's how I feel so far from like playing 2 runs. It's still, you know, 25% cleave, whatever, 25% impact, that's a bit better. Castigator stance. Enter the Castigator stance for 10 seconds, during which you have 15% movement speed, 80% reduced damage taken, and 100% reduced movement speed penalty from actions, but you cannot sprint. What the fuck? 80% reduced damage taken? Overtuned as fuck. This is super broken. During Castigator's stance, each elite or specialist skill grants you 5% damage, 10 stacks. Okay, so you get 50% damage as well. Yeah, that makes sense. During Castigator's stance, your Saber Mastiff has 75% damage. That doesn't really do much. During Castigator's stance, ranged skills replenish up to 10% of total ammo in your clip from your reserve rounded up. These 3 are just... like, why even play the game at that point? Why even, like, dodge? Why even do anything? Why? It's like literally 3 talents. Okay, so what? You know what? Let's just take away everything that is cool about Darktide and make it a talent. That's what it is. You don't have to dodge. You don't have to reload the weapon. You get damage for just existing. Yeah, no, those 3 are super broken. Make no sense. Yeah, you cannot sprint. It's not like sprint is crazy in this game either way. Sprint is completely useless, let's be fucking honest. You don't even need to use the sprint. You can just dodge around and slide around. Sprint? Yeah, I don't know. And it's having only 45-second cooldown, especially with other classes being able to reduce your cooldown on ults so fast. You feel like the Mastiff is one of those 1000 needles damage things. Doesn't have a lot of damage, but buffs via talent, she can make it pretty good. The problem with that is that if the Saber Mastiff, so far how it feels, has a very low damage numbers, adding up like 100% even, or 200% from like super small damage, still not gonna make it an actual decent amount of damage. So far, the only Saber Mastiff one that kinda does seem like it's gonna make it more useful is the 8 stack of bleed. And that's kinda it. But I could be wrong. Deploy a Nuncio Aquila in the target direction, so... it's just a better version of this one. Suppression immunity, that's actually gonna be more annoying than everything else, because suppression immunity makes you able to take more hits at once because you don't get staggered, and during the suppression state you actually cannot get hit sometimes, so yeah, that's a bit off. I don't know. The time between unaffected enemies' melee attacks is increased, so this slow down enemies' attacks. That is pretty strong. 30% revive speed, also very strong, and 10% attack speed. On this one, the only thing that kinda does something is the 30% revive speed. The toughness damage reduction only makes sense on like super high difficulties, and at that point, the only thing that can actually kind of prevent you from losing toughness is just regenerating it. Toughness damage reduction doesn't ever... that didn't ever feel like it gets even like any meaning to have. Break the line! Stir forward and bash, causing high stagger to enemies in front of you and gain 25% damage, 50% impact for 6 seconds. A better version of Ogren's charge without utility, so recycled again. 50% damage for your Saber Mastiff for 12 seconds after using your combat ability. Don't feel like that's gonna do much. As I said, small damage being boosted by like 3 times or something won't make it crazy. Replenish 20% toughness and 50% stamina for each elite specialist or monstrosity hit up. So you just have to hit them with this to basically get full toughness back and stamina. So once again, that's just buffed version of Ogren's charge. Because all he can get is toughness for hitting enemies, and here you can get stamina as well. Interesting. Restore 0.5 second ability cooldown for each hit. Increase to 1 on elite specialist or monstrosity. So you can lower the cooldown by 5 seconds for a 20-second ult. Interesting. Considering that it does massive stagger, I dare to say this ult is probably the strongest from all of these three because it's gonna be useful for your team as well. This one is strong, don't get me wrong. This one is very strong with the fact that you just pretty much don't take any damage. This one staggers everything while having like super low cooldown and you replenish stamina and toughness. So like that is kind of stupid. Like 15 seconds is like nothing. Pairing it up with other characters, you pretty much don't have cooldown on the ult now. So far, all the ults seem really fucking overtuned. The keystones, only one makes sense, other ones are kind of completely useless. The auras are fucking useless as shit. The blitz ones are very strong. From just understanding how the game works. I'm not saying that they are, I'm just saying from my standpoint, from knowing how the game works. 15% damage for 5 seconds after successful dodge. Zealot perk. 3% damage on successful attacks, 5 max stacks. That's also Zealot perk. Staggering an enemy grants 1 stack of 3% damage resistance on the next melee hit taken. Stacking 5 times. Staggering non-human sized enemies grants 5 stacks. Buffed Ogren's perk. 20% reload speed on next reload. That's veteran perk. Completely useless. Slightly increases sprint speed by 5% for 5 seconds. Kills restore 5% stamina. That's just also buffed Ogren perk. 20% corruption resistance and 75% reduced damage taken from toxic gas. I mean, it's not terrible, it's not good either, it's just so like out of the ass. 25% damage versus suppressed enemies, veteran perk. Enemies staggered by your melee attacks take 15% more melee damage, Ogren perk. 15% melee damage and 30% impact on first enemy hit with each attack. That's someone's perk as well, pretty sure. Killing a pounced elite specialist grants 15% damage versus elites and specialists. Fucking useless completely. 2% critical strike chance on kill. Zealot's perk, but once again buffed. Weak spot hits grant 2% weak spot strength. Veteran's perk once again buffed, completely buffed. Those two are very strong. 15% clip size rounded up, but those perks never made sense to me. Gain 1 effective dodges and 25% dodge duration. Psyker's perk, slightly nerfed, I guess, but 15% damage to enemies above 75% health. Never made sense to me. 15% range damage on melee staggering hits. I know what it means, Ramoid. I'm just saying that it doesn't make sense whatsoever to make a talent like this with the clip size rounded up, because on the shotgun with 5 ammo, you're basically just gonna have 6. That does nothing. That is such an obsolete, useless perk. It doesn't make any type of situation better. There's maybe like 1 in a million attempts where it will be somewhat useful, but it's still not gonna be useful enough to ever be called the main perk in a skill tree. Then again, if we consider all the other broken ones, I guess it makes sense they put some completely useless ones. You get the bolter, so maybe it's okay on that. Maybe, but honestly, if I don't know, it's still gonna be like 2-3 more ammo. It's like, I don't know, it's just so useless. Last rifle with huge ammo pool. Oh, well, you don't get those, so never mind. 15% range damage on melee staggering hits is kind of useless. It's like encouraging this weapon around, which you do anyways all the time, but 15% range damage is never gonna really do anything special. You're still gonna kill the enemies with ranged attacks in the same amounts of hits usually. It's either gonna be 1, 2, or 3. That's just not gonna change from 15% range damage. Pushing grants 75% cleave. That's someone perk as well, someone's perk. I think that's Ogren, something like that. I'm not sure about that. Gain 15% damage for 5 seconds after heavy melee attack. I don't know, like 15% damage increases and stuff like that. Never made sense to me because it's not gonna change the course of you hitting an enemy if it's such a small number. It's still gonna be 1, 2, or 3 hits, as I just said. It's not gonna like make it so you're always gonna one-hit something. Your Cyber Massive applies 6 stacks of brittleness on attack. Very strong. This is very good. This is very strong. Pair this up with the bleed. The bleed will deal more damage. You will deal more damage to enemies with armor. Periodically mark elite specialists and bosses for mercy sanction. Killing a marked enemy replenishes 15% toughness. Your Cyber Massive gains, so this is just a Psyker. The keystone at the top, that's it, that's the Psyker. Your Cyber Massive gains 150% Cyber Massive damage for 8 seconds after attacking a marked enemy. You gain 15% damage and 10% attack speed for 8 seconds after killing the marked enemy. This one will probably actually make somewhat more sense a bit, but still won't do much to the Cyber Mastiff's damage, I feel. Gain 10% crit chance and 25% crit damage on marked kill last 8 seconds. Pretty strong, I would say, yeah. 50% cooldown regeneration for 8 seconds after a marked kill. That is disgusting. What? So we have an ult that has 15-second cooldown just from itself, or basically hit an enemy. So on a higher difficulty, that's pretty much always gonna happen. You're always gonna hit that many elites and specialists to the point that it's gonna be almost 5 seconds reduction. And then you have 50% cooldown reduction. Yeah, that's broken. You gain 10% rending for 8 seconds after a marked kill. Also pretty strong. Killing a marked enemy grants 1% damage versus monstrosity and 1% damage resistance versus monstrosities. 30 max stacks lasts until... Oh, Bounty Hunter. Hello there. That perk was... I don't know, the Bounty Hunter perk for that never really did anything in Vermintide. At least I've never seen it feel like it does anything. Wait, as I said, 200 or 300% damage on such low values is still not gonna be nearly enough. Gain 10% movement speed and 10% damage for 5 seconds after pounds. That can be pretty strong in certain situations. Mainly the movement speed, not the damage. 3% damage on successful attack, 5 max stacks. We already had that perk. 15% movement speed on ranged hit lasts 3 seconds. That's pretty good as well for certain situations, I would say. Ranged attacks grant stacks of melee justice for each enemy hit. Max 30 melee hits remove 1 stack, while you have stacks of melee justice gain 15% melee damage, 35% melee impact, melee hits grant stack of range. So it's buffed veteran keystone. It's pretty good. This one is pretty good. It's buffed, but it lacks the dodges, so kinda that was the main point of the veteran perk even. You don't really feel like it does anything to your damage. The only thing that was doing was the dodge distance increase when you have that skill up or whatever. Well, you have stacks of range justice, you have 20% reload speed, that doesn't do anything. 20% reload speed is completely useless, obsolete, that never will do anything. Those are values that are way too fucking low on such slow loading guns to even consider them. Swap into your melee weapon while you have 15 melee justice stacks or more. Grants you 15% melee attack speed until you run out of stacks to swap to your ranged weapon. Fire rate and melee attack speed 15%. That's not really gonna make it super faster. It's... I don't know. Such things make no sense to me in a horde shooter because they will never feel like they are there during the gameplay. And they will never actually change any type of hardcore situation for the better. They just won't. If it had like a weapon which is like one-handed axes or something, like Vector and Vermintide has on the Zealot, then that attack speed would make sense because you can actually utilize it to the point where it's actually doing something. But with a weapon where you have a shield and a maul and you have a maul and that's kinda it, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it's gonna do anything. While you have stacks of melee justice, you gain additional 100% melee toughness regeneration, analyze incoherency, replenish 25% of any toughness that you replenish. Once again, buffed veteran perk. Also, the reason why I'm saying like sometimes nerfed or buffed just means that they're decent. That just means that they're decent because they do something on the other classes. That's what I mean here. So nobody fucking goes like, oh my god, can you like actually give an opinion and not just compare it to something else? The reason I'm comparing is because those other perks are decent. That does it. Oh no, this is like literally the same one as the other one, which is just giving you stats when you swap over. Don't know, that just stuck in way too much for nothing. I don't know. Yeah, it's branch focused on swap and melee range, which is like in Darktide you do that so often that with this amount of stacks, I don't think it's ever gonna feel worth. I might be wrong about this. I don't know. 15% melee rending on staggered enemies. That's pretty strong. Staggering hits and blocked attacks grant stacks of Forceful, lasting 5 seconds and stacking 10 times. Each stack gives 5% impact and 5% damage resistance. That is very OP. It's insanely OP for the sole reason. Staggering hits! I said this before, that's the most broken stat in Vermintide, and that is the most broken stat in this game as well. Given staggering force buffs in this game is the fucking strongest thing you can do. And getting damage resistance for just staggering, that is just ridiculous. That makes no sense why it's even there. That should unironically be on an Ogren. That should not be on this class, that should be on an Ogren. Limit the maximum health damage taken from an attack to 50. Buffed Slayer perk. Slayer has a perk in Vermintide where he cannot take more than X amount of damage from elites. It's only on elites. And here, everything cannot exceed the damage of 50 health damage. That's fucking nuts. Does the stagger from the 15-second CD ult count? Of course it does. It's any type of stagger. While at max stacks, which is pretty much always, and for 3 seconds afterwards, gain stun immunity. Additionally, your perfect blocks can block all attacks. That's just a buffed Ogren perk once again. This is super broken as well. Perfect blocks can block all attacks is so dumb for crushers. Yeah, I mean, just, you know, you get the drill. Replenish 0.5% toughness each second per stack. I mean, it's kind of low, but if you add it up with everything else, it's probably fucking strong as fuck. But max stacks and for 3 seconds afterwards gain 10% attack speed and 50% cleave. Cleave is cool, attack speed is not really cool, but still, for how easy it is to get this to max stacks, it's still a very broken perk. And combat ability gain 2.5% strength for each stack, so 25% strength. That increases stagger values as far as I remember. So that's also very broken. Remove cell stacks though, doesn't matter, you're gonna get them back almost instantly anyways from staggering. You probably have to hit one time a horde with the shield, so you just get all the stagger stacks instantly. Stagger nearby enemies upon reaching 0 stacks or 10 stacks. Fucking hell, man. This site, this entire site from the ult to here is absolutely disgusting. This is just Iron Breaker on actual steroids from Vermintide. This is disgusting. This makes no sense. Why is this here? This is ridiculous. This part here is absolutely ridiculous. This makes no sense. We just gave every single possible stagger, like something for stagger to this one class. It's ridiculous. This is so stupid. That makes no sense. Iron Breaker was actually somewhat balanced still. It can get pretty fucking broken at times, but in certain situations you cannot do X and Y. With this here, you 100% can. Absolutely disgusting. All of this here is just so stupid. And the fact that you can mix match this part here with this damage reduction here as well, ridiculous. In a good way or a bad way. Depends what you consider a good way or bad way. For me, it's a bad way because I consider something that is basically making the gameplay so easy to the point that nothing about the game makes any sense is a bad thing. And also, when one part of the talent tree makes it kinda, you need this talent tree for the class to do the best as it can, is also kinda bad. But if you look from perspective of someone, oh, this is super broken, I can just have fun with this and I can basically ignore half of the game, and you like that, then it's in a good way. That's kind of how I'm not gonna say that it's bad just because I think it's bad. I'm just gonna give you like basically two sides of this the book, the something. So like for someone that's just here for pure fun, sure, it's cool. But if we go that route, then make every single class have something as busted as this. So far, the only classes that have so busted stuff is a Zealot and Arbitrator, whatever the fuck his name is, fucking dredge looking ass weirdo. So it's, yeah, my final verdict on this class from just looking at this, not actually trying any perks, just knowledge pure based gameplay, like knowledge on the gameplay, because I played this game for like longest time ever. Reading all of these perks, this class has 90% of stuff that should be on different classes for them to be basically in a fun, cool state where they all can equally do something in the game. And another thing is that the fact that it's a paid class, it's a $12 class, and it has super disgusting perks that are basically buffed versions of pretty much every single class in the game, while having absolutely disgusting damage reduction plus stagger perks. It's not a good look. It is not a good look from a perspective of a player paying for something. It's a fun class for sure, because this is just broken. You pretty much just fucking turn off half of the game with this. From moral perspective, it's not a good look. From gameplay perspective, it kinda turns off every type of like difficulty stuff, and it's a massive power creep to the game, which could lead to some questionable changes down the road. It's just speculation, of course, though. And from fun perspective, from one side it's cool, because you just get to be in an ironical powerhouse that cannot be stopped. From other, it kind of just turns off pretty much every feature of the game, because nothing can stop you if you know what you're doing. So for a new, it's kind of like new player versus mid player versus average player versus like, you know, a pro player in a sense. You can be a pro in this game because it's just fucking about knowledge, and it's too much of a buggy mess for it to be considered a skilled game. But how this perk tree looks is that what they did so far is release Havoc, which was a very stupid mode with questionable balance changes, removing most of the cool part about skilled, that is even considered somewhat skilled part of Darktide. And now, instead of nerfing that part of the gameplay, we're just buffing the character. That is a new one for $12, and it has insane perks. Yeah, I don't know, it's I don't want to say it's bad, I don't want to say it's good, but it's definitely a questionable choice. In my book, though, it is not a good thing to do. Not a good thing at all. But I also never praised Havoc for it being difficult, because it's not difficult, it's just Deathwish Onslaught in Vermintide, but even more fuckery. So you just stand in one place and move on after doing this. Very mixed feelings about this. I always wanted there to be a Stagger Forest multiplier perks and stuff in this game, but I don't want it to be exclusive in such a big capacity to one class that is for $12. Doesn't make a lot of sense, I would say. A lot of these perks should be on Ogryn, unironically. Because right now we have a small guy with a dog that is tankier than someone that can literally pick up a Plague Ogryn. But that's just a lore reason, I guess. And to be completely fair, Darktide has not been lore at all. That's kind of my outlook on the talent tree without trying the talent tree. It's just a pure reading and understanding type of opinion. It's not like, you know... And, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird to me. I don't know. It doesn't... Yeah.